1329 is more than just a union. Like I say, it belongs to you. I wear it, it wears me. The people in it. But I wish now that I'm not there, that they learn to, like he says, talk to each other and work together. You can have your disagreements, but if you want your jobs, you have to get together.
It was very tough to get a job those days. And the way it used to work, even with some of the old timers, you could probably work Monday to Friday on a straight time day. And then all of a sudden, it would come Saturday and Sunday. Now, those days there, the foremen used to do the hiring. So, of course, now come Saturday and Sunday, the foreman's going to hire his cousin and his brother. So you didn't get a job.
You know, in one way, if you're not getting a job, it's funny. The guy's fighting and pulling over a thing. But if it's your turn, it can't be too funny. You got to bring that food home to your kids.
Sometime the shapes used to get so hectic, they used to have maybe 20 jobs, and what they would do is take 20 buttons and just throw them. Whoever ended up with the button, you had the job.
He told me the story about there was a bad guy down there that they worked for was named Mr. James. And Manuelito used to tell him all the time, I'm going to get you, Mr. James. I'm going to unionize and everything. And he said a lot of the guys were afraid to go along with Manuelito. But in the end, they did. And in 1933, I think it's 12 or 13 of them, the charter members, they started the union.
Manuelito organized, and nepotism remained the primary way of hiring people up until after the war.
In 1953, I believe, when Sonny Bento and all Junior Barros and all those guys returned from the war and came back, I'm sure they didn't like how it was and how you used to get hired. So they came up basically with, we're going to have seniority. That was in 1953.
You have card seniority, which would give you your seniority as far as bidding for jobs that are open. And then inside the gang structures, you have gang seniority, which is usually the longest, the oldest person or the person that's been in the gang the longest is usually your walking foreman. And then you have whatever the breakdown is underneath the workforce. If you have crane operators, you got 2 crane operators. And always down to whether it's 15 or 18 men, you would have a list of guys. There was seniority with inside the gang that mirrored the seniority inside the union.
So I got in a gang when I got a baseball bat. And when my father approached me, he said, I heard you picked up a baseball bat. I said, yep. So what you doing? I said, I'm going to jail or I'm going in a gang because I'm tired of people saying, oh, no, you can't get in the gang. And my father said, you can't do that. I said, you take my job every time you take your A card and stick it up in the air, and then you don't care about me or my kids. So if you can put your card up, just get out the way. Because I'm going in there and I'm getting in the gang.
There are times, if there is a downside to it, is there are some guys that have high seniority, of course, that didn't quite learn their craft as well as others. And there's times when they've gotten jobs and they didn't do well with the job.
What happened was times were changing. Ships were getting automated. So, again, at the particular time, probably of any business agent that we ever had that probably had the hardest job was Sonny Bento, because everything was basically changing at the time. And a lot of these old-timers that worked the waterfront, they could not get it to their head that you're not going to do that particular job anymore because now I got to put somebody onto a forklift to do that job. Well, they wasn't going to drive the forklift, so you had to put a younger guy on a forklift. And it was a chaos going into automation. And at that particular time, In 1953, it was just starting, going with seniority and automation, and it wasn't easy to place people because now you needed the qualified people. It wasn't just the idea that anybody could be a laborer.
Seniority got into a point where it didn't suffice any longer, the workforce, and that needed to be replaced. And that was replaced with another sea change in the 75-year history called rotation.
You had a group of people there that they had all the jobs when they wanted it and where they wanted it. They used to go from ship to ship, finish the ship, come right on another ship and bump you off. So at that particular time, as it was getting ready to change, so now we definitely got to do something.
It had been something that had been kicking around for a long time because we had another operation, another company in there called Tidewater Terminal. They handled all the scrap in the Port of Providence. But yet, some of us weren't able to touch that operation because it had almost like a locked-in crew of guys that had that job. So whenever Tidewater Terminal had a ship, it was the same group all the time.
Basically, at that particular time, they had what we call super seniority. They had all the jobs.
So the younger guys came in and we wanted to rotate all work in the Port of Providence. All work. Everything that came in and out, we wanted a piece of.
My father was the business agent at that time and was the defender of the old guard in the old system. And so I'm very privy to a lot of information that would happen around that time. And what was funny back then is, in a way, my father agreed with the younger group. But of course, he also understood and sympathized with the older group. Basically, he was caught in the middle.
There was always a famous saying on the waterfront, it's probably still there today, you know, longshoremen are like crabs in a basket, always trying to crawl on top of each other to get out, get to the top. Those days don't seem to change, even with seniority.
As new guys come, the old guys don't want to see them jump right in and get their stuff. You know, I've been here and I work, and so it's friction. It's just a natural thing that happens.
Through all of these arguments, my father would get a lot of phone calls. And then he would pick up the phone, and before he could even eat dinner, he had to talk to 10 guys. Most of those guys were his boys, that same group that came back from the war and established seniority. What are you doing? What are you doing going to work? You just got off a scrap. You can't let somebody else go to work. Well, we don't have to. We voted you in. You're in power and seniority rules, and and that's it. And you better defend us, and don't you let them kids take our job, and la 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 la. And he would argue back and forth with his own crew about trying to get them to stay home. You don't need it. I know what you need and what you don't need.
I run for office a few times. Those days there was every 2 years. I probably run maybe 4 years and lost. And kept losing and kept losing. So in the meantime, while we were working cement, we started a thing called the Green Gang. So what the Green Gang was comprised of all the guys that were in the gang, and we wanted to get into the gang. So this is how a little politics went, and a couple of times what we did is they bumped us off a ship and they come on a weekend. So that Monday when it got time to go back to work, all the people that was on a weekend that worked on their steady jobs, they went to their steady job, and all our folks in the Green Gang, we said, we're not going to work. We're not going to work. So to make a long story short, the ship got held up a few days, and between Sonny Bento and the foremans, and they kind of ironed it out a little bit. Basically, we got a little seniority, and we got that Green Gang, which was called the 6 Gang, to rotate right along with the 5 on certain cargo.
Every time someone retired, us younger guys got a little stronger, and we were able to push through some new ideas through the new leadership that we had.
The previous times that I ran, we was always getting beat, and we couldn't understand why I was getting beat. And what happened was they had a system in those days there that retirees could come in and vote. So every time we go, everybody say, yeah, you're going to win this time, Ray. We got everything straightened up. We go, holy mackerel. I'd go, Jesse, you remember that guy? He would come in there with a cane, about 92 years old, you know. Somebody would hold his hand and he would mark the ballot. And, you know, basically I had to file some grievances. And to make a long story short, because they weren't paying the same amount of dues that everybody else wasn't paying, they weren't members in good standing. So we had to have another election. And that was the election that I ended up winning by about 13 votes. And that was in 1974. And I took over in 1975. We had to end up going to New York City and go to this big executive board hearing in New York City. And in fact, I think Jesse was one of the people. We had no money at the time. They had quite a few lawyers that they were with. And I think 5 of us stayed in a room that was the size of a closet. We all chipped in, whatever. And we had a 3-day hearing in the International. We was all by ourselves. We didn't have any lawyers. And basically, I was the spokesman at the time. And that's where the super seniority came in. Mr. Gleason, which was the international president at the time, made a decision, and he told them that you people have what we call super seniority. And what super seniority does, it defeats unionism, because if we don't keep people coming in and working, eventually there's not going to be a union there. And he made the ruling that we would have rotation.
So we finally broke through that glass ceiling. And we came about. It wasn't well received by the old-timers. And at that point, a lot of them retired. They were old enough. They were beyond the standard retirement age. And they started to retire because they felt that the younger crew was coming in and maybe kind of like kicking them to the curb. I don't really feel that way. I felt that it was time to rotate all work, and it was necessary part of the longshoring in the port of Providence.
The sea change of rotation, I believe, was probably facilitated by lack of work slowing down in the port.
We couldn't rotate 10 or 14 gangs at that particular time. We couldn't do it. It was just too many people. So we had to take all the people and put them into 5 port-wide gangs. Of course, 5 bosses, or say foremen, right off the bat lost their job.
A lot of turmoil could have resulted from them situations, but guys like Barry, they were on top of that because they were always into that political part. Although he was a good worker, but his mind was always into the political part of it also. He's always watching what was going on.
I found over the years that probably the most important parts of longshore work was the leadership, but it was also the most hidden. No one really sees what goes on behind the scenes to get you to that point, to get you that job.
Vito, Sonny Bento, Arthur, all of them that run for office in there and helped. Barry, all of them had the same thing.
Men that spent a lot of time long after working hours, and they would do the work out of their offices and a lot of times at home, over the phone.
Everyone worked to this day, I think now. The president of the union goes to work. You know, and he's also compensated on the side for, you know, extra work or whatever he's doing in the union hall. But he gets his hands dirty just like everyone else.